So, what does it really cost to follow a belief? In one of his classic sermons, the evangelist Billy Graham argued that the price is, well, it's absolute. It's not some casual decision you make on a whim, but a total surrender. Today, we're going to break down that powerful message, piece by piece, to really understand its structure and its incredibly demanding call to commitment. Right from the jump, the sermon hits you with this stark challenge from the Gospel of Luke. There's no gentle lead in here. Graham immediately establishes his core theme. The message is clear. He's arguing that genuine discipleship isn't supposed to be easy. It involves sacrifice, a willingness to carry a really heavy burden. And you know what? This one verse really sets the tone for everything that's about to follow. Okay, so the sermon breaks down this high cost into 5 key parts. First, we're going to look at why it has to be a calculated decision. Then it gets into the surrender of 3 specific areas of your life: your body, your mind, and your heart. And all of this leads to a life that he describes as being under new management. So the very first point is that faith isn't just some emotional impulse. The sermon actually frames it as a deliberate, almost business-like calculation. Before you commit, you're urged to sit down, weigh the consequences, and consciously count the cost. And to really drive this point home, Graham uses 2 powerful analogies straight from the Bible. He asks, think about it. Would you start building a huge tower without first knowing if you have enough money to actually finish it? Of course not. Or would you lead an army of 10,000 soldiers into battle against 20,000 without first considering if you can win? No way. Both of those demand a realistic assessment, and the sermon applies that exact same logic to the decision of faith. All right, so after you've counted the cost, what exactly is being surrendered? Well, the sermon identifies 3 areas, and it starts with the most tangible one, the body. This is all about gaining discipline over your physical appetites, your passions, and your actions. Now, to explain this, Graham breaks down physical temptation into these 3 big categories. He uses the story of Eve in the Garden of Eden as his primary example. He argues she fell for all 3. The fruit was good for food, that's the lust of the flesh. It was pleasant to the eyes, the lust of the eye. And it was desired to make one wise, that's the pride of life. To illustrate the lust of the flesh, he tells the story of Esau. The guy was starving, and he traded his entire inheritance for a single bowl of stew. I mean, think about that. In that one moment, immediate physical gratification completely outweighed his entire future. A choice, the sermon says, that he bitterly, bitterly regretted. And then there's the powerful story of Samson. This was a man strong enough to kill an actual lion with his bare hands. But, the sermon argues, he couldn't control what it calls the lion of his own body. His uncontrolled passion led him straight into a trap set by Delilah, which ultimately led to his complete destruction. And then the sermon connects these ancient stories directly to modern life, listing these contemporary temptations. The core argument is that forces like drug culture, gluttony, and just the pressure to conform socially are way too powerful for most people to resist on their own. And in this view, the only way to get control is to surrender your body to a higher power. Okay, so the second area of surrender builds right on top of the first. We're moving from the physical to the intellectual. The sermon argues it's not enough to just control your actions. You also have to surrender your mind. And this is where it gets really interesting. The sermon defines the word repentance in a very specific way. It's not about feeling sorry or having an emotional breakdown. Instead, it's presented as a conscious, intellectual decision to change your mind. The argument is that God is the one who handles the change of heart, but the individual's first job is to make the decision to change their mind. So this change of mind, what does it look like? Well, it's basically a constant battle. The sermon contrasts these negative thoughts that it says can lead to spiritual ruin, things like pride, anger, and lust, with a list of virtues from the Apostle Paul's writings. The instruction is to actively, deliberately focus your mind on things that are true, pure, and just. Basically, to take control of your inner world. And that brings us to the final and probably the most critical surrender of all. After the body and the mind, the sermon targets what it calls the root of all human problems, the heart. And we're not just talking about emotions here. In this context, heart means the very core of a person's will and desires. To make this point, the sermon uses this incredibly powerful quote from the prophet Jeremiah. The premise is stark. The human heart, if you just leave it to its own devices, is fundamentally flawed. You can't trust it. It's presented as being deceitful and desperately sick. So, if the heart is flawed, what's the result? Well, according to the sermon, it's sin. And sin is defined in absolute terms here. It's not some kind of sliding scale. The idea is that if you break just one part of God's law, even telling one little lie, you're considered guilty of breaking the entire law. That sets a standard that's pretty much impossible for anyone to meet on their own. After presenting this problem of the heart, the sermon offers its central solution. The phrase, the blood of Christ, well, it's explained here as more than just a symbol. It represents the actual life of Christ, given on the cross. In this theological framework, he took the penalty for that sinful heart, offering a way for it to be cleansed and made right. So what's the outcome of this surrender and cleansing? It's a radical transformation. The promise isn't just forgiveness for the old flawed heart, but the gift of a completely new heart and a new nature. The sermon describes this as being born from above, a total internal renewal. And this all leads us to the big conclusion of the sermon, where all these ideas, surrendering the body, the mind, and the heart, are tied together with one simple but really powerful metaphor for what this transformed life looks like. The sermon closes with this final analogy. It compares a person to a failing business. You know, when a new owner takes over, a sign goes up in the window, under new management. Graham argues that's exactly what happens in a surrendered life. You're not in charge anymore. A new manager comes in to redecorate, clean house, and make the whole enterprise new from the inside out. So, to sum it all up, the sermon's call to action is for a total, complete commitment. This isn't a partial offering. It's the full surrender of all three aspects of who you are: your physical body, your intellectual mind, and your inner heart. All of it handed over. In the end, the sermon leaves its audience with this very stark choice between two paths, framing it as a decision between Christ and chaos, life and death. And so we're left to think about this final, powerful question. In any area of our lives, spiritual or otherwise, what does it truly mean to be under new management?